Yes. Well, welcome. Thank you for attending, for being with us. And this is our second live broadcast, and I am really overjoyed. Thank you for all of your patience as we are learning every step of the way. And all of that is important. And of course, tonight is called Learning Ngöndro. So we're all learning together. And I really do appreciate your patience in our unfolding as we learn how to live broadcast, and it allows us to connect more deeply to you all. So in a way, Ngöndro is all about connection. When I first heard the word Ngöndro, well, first of all, I didn't know what the word really meant. And then I misunderstood the word because long ago, Ngöndro, which are foundational practices, the beginning of Ngöndro means to go before. And people used to refer to them as preliminary practices. And I first came in touch with Ngöndro after I'd done a lot of practice, and I thought, well, do I want to do preliminary practices? I now understand that Ngöndro is actually foundational practices, and that yes, indeed, I really want to do foundational practices because the foundational practices are actually really interlinking methods, and those interlinking methods is again a connector, and they're a connector to a lineage, to the Longchen Ningtig lineage, to Longchen Rabdram, who lived in the 1300s, to Jigme Lingpa, who lived in the 1700s and had the incredible experience of almost like a dream, but during meditation, of maybe like a computer download of a file, the entire teachings of Longchen Rabdram. So we have these very great teachers in the lineage, and of course coming from Padmasambhava and Yeshe Sogyal and Longchen Rabdram and Jigme Lingpa. And how does all of that connect to Ngöndro? So at the time when I thought, well, Ngöndro's preliminary practices, I don't know if that's something I want to do. I had seen people, for example, when I was in Bodh Gaya, and the time when you could come walk into the Bodhi temple, meditate in the Bodhi temple, and there were a lot of Tibetan people who put down long wooden boards and they did prostrations. And prostrations is part of Ngöndro. It's something that we will not be talking about this evening because when Azam Rinpoche asked me to teach Ngöndro in 2003, and as I had told in another segment of our recordings, that I didn't know he was going to announce to a large audience that I was going to be teaching Ngöndro. So when I went up to talk to him and inquire and say, did you really want me to teach Ngöndro? And he said, of course. And I said, well, how do I tell people? And he said, just tell them I said so. And I said, well, where do I begin? And he said, you begin with the mind of enlightenment. And I thought, that is huge. And then I found out that the mind of enlightenment was another word for bodhicitta. And that is literally the mind of the awakened one. So as we begin our Ngöndro path, and many of you have been on the Ngöndro path for a long time, many of you have completed Ngöndro, and yet our bodhicitta remains what is most important. And again, it's the connector, that interconnectedness, that we want to connect to that which already is. We already have our Buddha nature. We already have our bodhicitta. And so we do our Ngöndro both to connect and also to go through some practices for connection and also practices of purification, that which keeps us from knowing our own Buddha nature. So as I said, I did not think that I wanted to do the preliminary practices. However, it is said that sometimes there are angels or dakinis, and they have very beautiful ropes and lassos, and they bring you more deeply into the Dharma. So I had one of those experiences. And this is quite a few years ago, probably in the maybe late 19, maybe 1990 something. And I was going to be going to California. I was living in Portland, going to California for my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. And so a number of us were gathering at the Portland airport and then taking a flight down to California. And they had been married at the Riverside Inn in Riverside, California. So I got a phone call from a friend who's still a very good friend. His name is John Paul Clark Hansen. And he said, Jacqueline, if you go to the airport today, if you get there early, you could meet a very great Tibetan master. And I don't know if he knew I was going to the airport, but I was already on my way. And I said, I'm on my way. And he said, great, go to this particular gate. And that gate was next to the gate that I was leaving from. So I get to my gate, and then my plane is delayed. And so I saw my friend Clark, and he said, well, we're going to all have lunch together with this Tibetan. And again, I actually had no idea who it was. And it turns out that it was a very great Dzogchen master named Kusum Lingpa. So at the airport, and this is way before 9/11 when there was a lot of security, we had lunch somewhere in a room at the airport, and somebody had made lunch and spread it across the table, and maybe there were like 10 people there. So I was sitting across from Kusum Lingpa, and he was speaking, and I believe he had a translator. And so he had spent a long time in Tibet, very powerful, and so powerful that when he was in prison, they actually let him go because they could not kill him. So here I am with this very great master. And so he looks at me and he said, you should come to my retreat, which he was going to be giving in Williams, Oregon. And I hadn't planned to come to the retreat. And I thought, well, I better call down to Williams and talk to somebody there to see if that was okay. So I called down to Williams, Oregon, which was one of the Chatakampas, and the person who answered was Lama Jamie, who was the head of that meditation center. And I said, oh, Lama Jamie, I'm with Kusum Lingpa, and he wants me to come to his Dzogchen teaching in Williams. And I don't know if there's room or what the permission is. And he said, well, that will be fine as long as you commit to doing Ngöndro. So there I was, and I thought, I better commit. So I did at that time commit to doing Ngöndro, and I began my journey in Ngöndro. And at first it was the doing of prostrations, the doing of bodhicitta, and then of course what was called guru yoga, which was not exactly what I understood, but I was doing this practice. And I didn't feel that advanced about it, but I was doing it. And then suddenly what happened was one day I had a practice. I thought it was pretty ordinary. The next day I was walking down the street, and all of a sudden I realized something like a door opening when I did not even know a door was there. And I said, it must be the practice. And since then, I've realized that it indeed is a self-revealing practice. Ngöndro is a self-revealing practice. And in the way that Azam Rinpoche teaches it, it is that he condensed it. He condensed it so that each of us could actually do it. Some of the Longchen Nyingtik practices are long. This one is very short. It's called Waves of Splendor. And that is because part of our interconnectedness is that we are connecting to blessings. And of course, at first learning that I was entering a practice for blessings, I wanted to know, oh, where are they coming from? Where are the blessings? How do they get here? How do I feel them? And so forth. So the first practice that Azam Rinpoche wanted me to introduce everyone to is the bodhicitta. And so here it is. It's Ho, like moons and waters, sights deceive us. We are all bound in cyclic chains. So all may rest in their clear mind sphere. I raise Bodhi through four boundless states. Line by line is fascinating. And again, in working with a condensed practice. For me, I connected to Ho, like moons and waters, sights deceive us, with an experience that I had when I was a nun in Burma. And so when I was in Burma, which I have shared with some of you during one of our sessions, I was given a trip to an area called Upper Burma, which is actually Middle Burma, which is now called Yangon. Rangoon, I went from Rangoon up to Mandalay and small little temples. And when I was at one temple, I had two translators and they wanted me to look at something very special. There was a teakwood temple and it had a path around it. And there was a small little, almost like a coin size hole in the path. And this small size hole would fill with water. And that water at night, when the moon would shine, would reflect the whole temple. So whenever I say, Ho, like moons and waters, sights deceive us, we're all bound in cyclic chains, so all may rest in their clear mind sphere. I raise Bodhi through four boundless states. I think of that small little hole with the water, with the moon reflecting. And as we know from science that how we perceive is just a mechanism. And of course, that melds with our conditioned mind. And if our conditioned mind does not understand how things really work, how things really operate, then truly we are bound in cyclic chains, bound in our misunderstanding, bound in one set of misunderstandings leading into another. So when Azam Rinpoche teaches to and encourages bodhicitta, it is with a vastness of mind. So when we go to raise our awareness into the four: loving kindness, equanimity, joy, compassion, it's not just those as small words, but really a vast perception. And acknowledging that there are a vast amount of beings, and those are beings that we can see, beings who we cannot see, beings who we have known in past lives, beings that we have never met, and beings that we have met and know well, or beings who we pass by every day. This vastness is a crucial point of our practice. So we're not just developing love, compassion as words, or equanimity, or let's be joyful, but rather, again, coming back to that interconnectedness, that we're connecting with a lineage. we're connecting through love, we're connecting as our own Buddha nature, our own selves that are already Buddha, and we're connecting with the vastness. And the heart essence of the vast expanse is this practice. And so we could do nothing more than work with ourselves in a very vast way. The many people, when they hear about a Dzogchen master, think, well, I just want Dzogchen. I don't want that Ngöndro. I don't want those preliminary practices. So the first time that Asam Rinpoche came, we set up a few talks and empowerments, and one of them was called Dzogchen, and one of them was called Ngöndro. So at the Ngöndro talk, he taught Dzogchen because he said, oh, these are the people that really want the foundational practices, and that's who I teach Dzogchen to. And then on the night of the Dzogchen, he taught Ngöndro. And it shows that that foundation is something that is imperative. And my own experience is that it's imperative because the practices themselves open to the lineage, the blessings come through the lineage, and this practice, which has been named so aptly the waves of splendor, is where we connect our ordinary with the extraordinary, and we make it our own. The first time that I ever experienced a Dzogchen master, I had met Dzogchen masters, but an actual experience was something I didn't even realize that I had. One day I was in Bodh Gaya, where I'd been practicing for quite a long time, as I've shared before. And I decided that I was going to go inside the Bodhi temple from early in the morning until late at night, and I was going to meditate all day. So I went after breakfast, and I went inside the Bodhi temple in Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha was enlightened, and I was the only person inside, and I was doing silent meditation. And at that time, I was also doing eyes closed meditation. So I was in the Bodhi temple and nobody else was there, very quiet. And then suddenly I felt this very large presence enter the room, and I could tell there was somebody else there. And that very large presence sat down right in front of me. And I thought, oh my, this is interesting. But at that time, I did eyes closed meditation, and I was very serious. And I thought, I am not opening my eyes. So I sat there meditating, and then suddenly I realized I was being completely brought into this very large Tibetan person's meditation. I was chanting and doing prayers. And finally I said, I think I need to open my eyes. And so I opened my eyes and I saw this very large Tibetan man and a very small monk. So I stayed there with them for hours. Nobody else came in. Then suddenly the very large monk stood up, and the young monk stood up. And I was determined to stay there, but I was pulled up. And then the monks started circumambulating the Bodhi temple. I started in their wake. I was circumambulating the Bodhi temple, and a friend saw me and very quizzical, and then he took a picture of them. 7 years later, I discovered on the cover of one of the Buddhist magazines that that person that I sat with all morning in the Bodhi temple was Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and Rob Jam. And so that brought a lot of faith to what those practices were. And they teach Ngöndro. And so then I really understood the importance of Ngöndro. At the same time, I understood the importance of the connectedness to Buddha, and that it all was not separate. So for our practice that we want to do, again, it is Ho, like moons and waters, sights deceive us. We're all bound in cyclic chains, so all may rest in their clear mind sphere. I raise Bodhi through four boundless states. And to come to this practice with that feeling of a vast mind, that vast mind is what does connect to eventually the Dzogchen practices, the Dzogchen understanding, the ultimate wisdom. And at the same time, we're really creating a ground, which is foundation for these foundational practices. So with the request of Azam Rinpoche, we will begin our Ngöndro practice with the bodhicitta. And part of the bodhicitta is the loving kindness, it is the compassion, it is the equanimity, and it is the joy. And the key to joy, equanimity, loving kindness, compassion is actually equanimity. Because equanimity is the foundation which allows for the openness of mind, the non-discrimination of mind, reaching out to the vastness of mind, where we can create the foundation for limitless love, limitless compassion, and also limitless wisdom. So the mind of the Buddha, which Azam Rinpoche said to begin with, it includes the understanding of cause and effect. It includes the understanding of what is called emptiness. We'll talk more about that. And it also includes these wonderful qualities of love, unconditional, of compassion, unconditional, unwavering. And again, that steadfastness, which Azam Rinpoche calls the self-settling mind. When we have the self-settling mind, then that mind opens into our own Buddhahood, which opens into the vastness, which opens into the vastness of the expanse. But it all starts with Ho, like moons and waters, sights deceive us. We're all bound in cyclic chains. And the wish, so that all may rest in their clear mind sphere, I raise Bodhi through four boundless states. So that we are doing this practice for ourselves, yes, for all sentient beings, yes, and that we're all equal in this. We're not doing it just for someone else. We're doing it for ourselves, and we are already that. Something that we'll go over later, which is how we connect to our inner resource of our inner teacher and allowing that guru, teacher, to rise as an energy from our heart center to the crown of our head and connecting to Padmasambhava. And Azam Rinpoche says, yet the Buddha never moves. So we start to work with a whole different mindset. And then what happens is that the mind leaps. It leaps into wisdom. We do practices and then doors open where we did not know there were doors. And that's kind of the excitement of it all. And at the same time, once we start doing prostrations, once we start doing the purification of Vajrasattva, bringing the light in, and then sometimes the chung happens when that light meets with some of the knots within our mind-body system, then we need to work those through. So when I first heard about Ngöndro, I heard of people working through a lot. And I thought, oh, it's all purification. But really, Ngöndro happens on so many different levels. And I hope that we all can do that journey together. So I'd like to know if there's going to be any questions in a few minutes. And the other part of it is that in this whole journey, it's so essential to always remember that our heart of hearts is really our own Buddha nature. You know, we might have different thoughts about ourselves or other people, or we're pulled here and there, but really the heart of it all, that self-settling mind, is self-settling back into equanimity, for even deeper than equanimity, into the Buddha nature itself. And that Buddha nature itself goes into the vast expanse. I remember when I was going to go to a 1-month teaching with my teacher prior to Azam Rinpoche, who was Chadaktuka Rinpoche, and he was teaching the Nyingtig Yabzi at Samden Ling in Northern California. And I had not at that time finished Ngöndro, and I was doing the Dujum Tersar Ngöndro, and I didn't know if I could go to those teachings. And so I went to talk to him and I said, I'd really like to come to these teachings. Would that be okay? And he said, oh, that would be okay if you promise to become a Buddha in one lifetime. So once again, I wanted to go to those teachings. And so I said, yes, I would like to become a Buddha in one lifetime. And the nice part about it is that we recognize that that is already who we are. So the Ngöndro practice, again, is connecting. It is an interconnection. It is a connection to teachers. It also happens as these are interconnected practices. So yes, there's prostrations. Yes, there's refuge. Yes, there's connection to a guru. Yes, there is something called guru yoga. These are all separate practices woven into one called Ngöndro, and it's the way that we connect, and it's the foundation. And somebody asked me, well, how does it relate to your life? You know, how does that relate? And a friend of mine who's a very well-known Thangka painter in Portland and internationally, Sanjay Elliott. Remember Sanjay and I were once talking about Ngöndro, and he said to me, Jacqueline, he said, I wish I had done Ngöndro slower, because there are so many components of Ngöndro. So in our next sessions, we're going to keep exploring what is that. But in the meantime, it's really important either writing it down, memorizing as I have, ho, like moons and waters, sights deceive us. We are all bound in cyclic chains, so all may rest in their clear mind sphere. I raise Bodhi through 4 boundless states. Thank you. And we will take questions.
Thank you, Lama Jacqueline. And just to let everybody know, you do have the ability to unmute yourself. So if you have a question for her, please go ahead and do so, or raise your hand, either way.
And also, if you're doing Ngöndro, it's fine to communicate that if you were thinking of doing Ngöndro. And I know there's people in attendance who actually have completed Ngöndro, and they may have some hints for us.
Lama Jacqueline,
Yes.
that was really outstanding, and I'm really grateful for your true and sincere words.
Thank you. Thank you. Longtime practitioner.
And I just have an administrative question. How frequently are we going to be meeting?
Oh, Jennifer has an announcement.
So our next meeting with Lama Jacqueline will be on July 15th at the same time, 6 p.m.
Pacific Standard Time.
Pacific Standard, yes.
Thank you. I'm just so glad to be.
Great. It's wonderful. All of the people here. Many of you I know. There are some people I don't know. So welcome. And if you ever want to, we have info@samdenling.org, and you're welcome to email questions. And also, we can set up phone consultations. I feel that it's very important for us to stay in communication if you want. It's not a requirement. I know everybody learns differently. I know I learn differently. Um, since we're into the questions and answers, I also wanted to let people know is that when we post the videos, which we will do, we do not post questions and answers for your privacy. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. So I'll share a story that won't be posted. When I first started Ngöndro, I did start with prostrations. And although I had seen, as I said, Tibetans prostrating on long wooden boards in Bodh Gaya, I had never done prostrations. And so I put a picture of Padmasambhava up on a wall, and I got a yoga mat, and then I started doing my prostrations. And then one day I said, what am I doing? I am bowing down to a man on the wall. And I just had this moment and I thought, I think I need some help on this. So very fortunately, one of the teachers through Gonpa was Lama Inga. And I said, Lama Inga, I don't know if I can continue bowing down to the man on the wall. And she was terrific. She said to me, so Jacqueline, I would be curious. It was like the perfect answer. And so I actually continued my prostrations out of complete curiosity. So I think we all are going to come up against something. And it's very important to just go, well, these are pretty ancient practices. At the same time, our own experience is incredibly valuable. You know, we shouldn't just do them because everyone else has done them, but we need to do them with a spirit of investigation and, as I said in the very beginning, connection. Okay, so that was mine experience. Anyone else?